The final class, the artificer. A class that I have the least amount of experience with in Dungeons & Dragons as a whole. And in general, it was never one of the classes that interested me, as it didn't really it didn't scratch any itch that I had. It was just one of those classes that existed and I didn't really care about. Similar to the druid. Never really cared. So, you may be asking yourself, well, Brooke, if you have no experience or little to no experience playing the artificer, how do you plan on changing them in a system? Well, that's a tough one. Because an artificer, as a concept class, has a few flaws in it. The artificer, as it stands in 5th edition and in previous editions, it was a class that primarily focused on some form of technological advancement. And that would usually be lumped in with things like different kinds of mechanical inventions, like homunculi or golems, firearms, stuff like that. There would be some diversity in terms of their mechanics where they'd actually offer things like potions and elixirs, but I think that's the main issue, is that the mechanics of each portion of the artificer itself, if given their own spotlight, can thrive as their own separate entity. But with the limitation of it being a singular class, no one aspect of the artificer can be too strong. So, what do I mean by this? Well, the artificer is all about machines, inventing things, making potions, basically a sort of support, damage, utility role. But each of the roles that it attempts to fill, at least in 5th edition, 4th edition did pretty good, but in 5th edition, the roles it tries to fulfill as a half support caster, half damage caster, half utility character, with all of its quirky features that it gets to support allies, support themselves, do things that are very roleplay orientated and don't have a lot of mechanics attached to them. No one aspect of the artificer can be too strong. If you make the support aspect too strong, it becomes just a weaker version of any other support caster, and everything else gets left to the wayside and is basically a ribbon feature. If you make the damage aspect, it's just a worse anything that can do damage. And if it doesn't meet the baseline of Warlock, then it's pretty bad. And if you make it a utility caster or a utility-based class, it will lose 100% of the time to the wizard. So no matter what the artificer tries to focus on specifically, it will always lose out in that aspect, and the other two aspects will be left in the dust. So here's what I plan. I plan on separating the artificer into at minimum 2 classes, and if I could fit a 3rd class somewhere in that area, I will. But as of right now, it's just 2 classes. And there will be the inventor, which is specifically around building machines for different purposes, and it will be a utility-based class where it can still deal a little bit of damage, but that is not its focus. It is utility-based. It is meant to make the party's lives easier. This is where I think the infusions will go, as the infusions most of the time for the artificer are a support-based tool and aren't really meant to be used by the artificer themselves, but can. So in this sense, The inventor will be a support utility class that's entire goal is to make the rest of the party better at what they're attempting to do, while also having the ability to defend themselves or pull a little bit of weight if need be. Basically, in terms of damage, they're going to be equal to the Warlock baseline in 5th edition, but they won't be doing a significant amount of damage. And then there will be the potion master, the alchemist, the whatever you want to call it, that specializes in the damage aspect, where all of their effects are purely based on the combat side, where all of them will have different effects like control and damage spells, but they will be limited in the sense that they will have smaller areas, they'll affect less targets, they'll do a little bit less damage than something like an actual striker class where their entire thing is meant to do damage. So they'll be closer to like a defender in terms of damage, where they have decent damage output, but they're nowhere on the levels of a striker. And then the third class that I was thinking about throwing in there is kind of like the Gundam class, where you just get into a robot, or you have some form of construct that you control or operate either independently from yourself or as part of yourself. And it will be sort of the defender style class where it's meant to take a lot of hits. I'm not sure. But I think that's what needs to get done to help the artificer have some form of actual identity. But yeah, that's the end for this series. Be on the lookout for my next video, as I might be dropping a bombshell on y'all. And, giving you a little bit of insight as to what's been going on.